some of this. The Bruno Kreisky Award, the Leo Elgar Award, the McGill University Award for service to country and the world, and so much more. So without much ado, Radika Kumaraswamy.
Shan, it's a pleasure to be here and congratulate you on the reawakening Lanka generally, and especially your project Appe Lanka. I have a special connection to Shan. One is through a relative, her uncle Michael Ondaatje, who over time has become a very close friend. And the other, it was that I was the UN Special Representative on Children in Armed Conflict, and therefore, shall I say, like a professional connection with Shan on issues that perhaps move both of us equally. I must say that as the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women in the 90s and as Special Representative on Children in Armed Conflict, and also recently in 2015, where I was the lead author on a global study on women, peace and security, I have gone all over the world to conflict zones, except my own, because the UN prohibits you from doing your own country. So I had to send someone else. But I must say that as I traveled, I realized that at the headquarters in New York and in Geneva, people talk one kind of talk. It's about power and women coming into positions of power, women being in the military, women at the peace table, all this, how women should participate in power. But when you go to the armed conflict zones and you talk to the people there, that is not what's on their mind. What is on their mind is what Shan is doing. How to live the next day. What you take, the basic elements of living. I find they're interested in livelihood, local infrastructure, and we must realize that there are many people who are particularly vulnerable in all conflict zones. One is the war widows. As you know, many of them, not only on both sides, are people who are really without a situation of reaching out. Former combatants who may have been female also appear vulnerable in these situations. And you know, young men, the UN and all of us, we go around the world and we fight for the rights of women and for the rights of girls. But I was in Cox's Bazar recently, and the assistants who were with me said, "You're always talking to the women and the issues of sexual violence and other things. Why don't you talk to the young men this time?" And you know, that was to me quite a shock and very revealing. And suddenly I understood why there's such problems in the world. Because these were young men in Cox's Bazar. They live in a refugee camp. They do nothing the whole day. They have no high schools, because refugee camps really do not provide education beyond 5th standard, even if they're up to 5th standard. There's no employment because they can't go out of the camps, so IDP camps. All they do is go to the mosque every day, 5 times a day, and pray and meet with the other young men. Now to me, there's no more dangerous situation than this. But nobody is willing to recognize it or deal with it. So I was thinking to myself, maybe it's time now that we also look at the problem of young men. This is my new cause. Having done women and children, I really feel that, and I went to the law faculty the other day, 80% of the Sri Lankan law faculty are young men, are women. Only 20% of the Sri Lankan law faculty are men. So where are all these men? And my neighbor at the dining table was saying how many tuk-tuk drivers there are. That's where they're going. So while the women get degrees, the young men are becoming drug addicts and tuk-tuk drivers. Some of them do go into IT besides a degree. It's not all bad. But there is a major problem with our young men, and we're not facing it. But let me just go back to Shan's projects. Let's just think of what she is doing. These are exactly the kind of things that all over the world I found people want. The renewable electricity project. It's crucial for communities that are regenerating themselves. The water project. What can be more crucial than that? Being able to drink safe drinking water. Bicycles for school children so that they can go to school because the distances are so large between where schools are. And teaching English and Sinhala to O levels. And I say Sinhala here because the job market in the South is going to be very much people speaking Sinhala. Now Switzerland, for example, people speak all three languages. They're taught that from the young age. French, German and Italian. And I think in the north also, so that they can communicate with their neighbors, should be taught both English and Sinhala at the level of the O level. And also using sports and arts as a way of communicating is crucial too, as you find through time. It's a way of fostering peace and reconciliation, but it is not the only means. We have found, research has shown, for example, Israel and Palestine, there are hundreds of programs dealing with arts and dealing with reconciliation. But you can't only leave it at that. It must be sustained over a longer period of time, and the communities must learn also to live together. So let me just say that these kinds of programs don't make the headlines, but they are in the end what communities live through and really desire at the end of a war. And unless these develop, people become disgruntled, people begin to agitate, and things become difficult again. So now we don't talk about only peace, we talk about sustainable peace. And the need to make sure that post-conflict there is peace that is sustainable. One thing I noticed as I was watching this is, one thing we all take for granted is a smile. But I found wherever I go to war zones, there are very few smiles. One smiles only when one is relaxed and comfortable. And except for young children, you will find I've met many children, adolescents, who throughout the whole interview lasting 1 hour, no matter what jokes you crack, no matter what you say, they don't smile. But the smiling children on the screen, in the games that Shan provides, is a sign of hope for us, that there are contexts in which children, especially not young children, they will always smile, but the adolescent child begins to smile. And that is when a country can have hope for its future. Thank you.